Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. In this episode, I want to talk about how to transition from a manager or even from an employee to a leader in your business. And a lot of this is going to be mindset shifts. And so without further ado, I'm going to jump right in. I'll be looking over here at my notes, so bear with me as I read through these. There's a couple things that you guys need to develop. I think from my opinion on researching people like Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, Tom Bilyeu, Russell Brunson, Myron Golden, just about everybody. I mean, like so many people in the space. And reading some older books and reading some newer books, I think the number one thing is like a strong why or a purpose. I was recently in a Tony Robbins seminar and someone asked like, how do I, they were asking him, how do I keep my momentum? Like I feel like great in the seminar and this conference, but like, how do I keep this going? And for me, it's like really simple. I forget what Tony Robbins' response was to that. But it's really simple. It's like if your why, if your purpose, it's not clear enough to you and you don't want it enough, something's wrong. Like something is broken in that equation. Like for me, like doing these videos and thinking about people like that people from my past or whatever that are going to make fun and whatever, like I don't care. Like I want to help other people so badly avoid the mistakes that I made and the pain and the things that I went through and get to their success quicker, that I just don't care. Like none of that can get in my way of this purpose. And that's another part that I want to touch on later. So a calling that's bigger than yourself. I'm going to touch on that in a second. But your why has to be so strong and so clear that nothing else can get in your way. A why that's larger than yourself. I think a lot of times when you evaluate people with depression or you evaluate moments when you're depressed, so much of our thinking, so much of my thinking, so many people that I've observed, and my background in school was in psychology. I sat in on a lot of like meetings because I was thinking I wanted to be a psychologist a long time ago. And then I realized I had enough of my own problems to be able to help people with theirs. But that's a side tangent for another day. But I realized that when people were most depressed, the words and the things and the behaviors and the actions that they were conveying all had to do with themselves. But like when I was able to take people out of that and be like, let's go to the coffee shop, here's $5, pay for that person's coffee in front of you, like that, people could break out of a depression and once they broke out of this thing of me, and all my problems and all my stuff and all the things that are going wrong, once you could break out of that program, it became, they were able to experience joy in a way that they hadn't been before. I'm not saying it's a cure-all and it lasted forever and whatever, but I think there's a really important piece, which is talking about having a why, a really strong why, having clarity on that, understanding that. And then it needs to be larger than yourself. Tom Bilyeu is a great person who talks about this a lot. I mean, the guy made protein bars, right? It's like greater than yourself, philosophical. It's like they're selling protein bars. They didn't even taste that great. No offense, Tom. They always got stuck in your teeth. But the thing is, his why wasn't just the protein bar. He had a family with obesity and he really wanted to help other people be able to snack on something healthy so that they didn't have to die early, because he wanted people in his family, his mom, his dad, and brothers and whatever, he wanted them to be around forever. And so that why is so clear and it's so strong and it's so meaningful to him that there was nothing that was going to get in his way of doing that. So having a why and having a why that's not only strong but larger than yourself. The next one is just understanding that it's a mind game. It's like building a business and going through this whole thing is a total mind game. Like it's like mind Olympics. And the quality of our life, as Tony Robbins would say, like the quality of our life is so much about what we focus on. Like our emotions determine the quality of our life. And so if we're constantly sad and whatever, it's like, okay, like stop watching the news, like you need to move away from some of the things that are negative in your life and think about where these things are coming from. Now, I'm not saying it's all just external, sources. Like a lot of people, I know a lot of people that are sick or they're ill or whatever. And it's like, they keep going back to the same patterns of like listening to the same garbage news about the world ending and this and that. Even if it does, like, there's no point in like preparing ahead of time. Like since the beginning of time, people have been talking about Armageddon. I'm not saying don't be ready, but live your life. Like you need to live your life. And so living in this constant state of fear, there's so much science around this, like on down regulating your just 4 minutes of being in a negative emotional state from like watching the news has 4 hours of down regulating gene expression and protein, like in all these other things that happen in our body to help our immune system. Don't do that. Just don't do it. Like if you don't want to have cancer, if you don't want to be sick, if you don't want to be dealing with all of the things that come from down regulating your immune system, pull yourself away from the news, pull yourself away from things that are negatively impacting you until you're strong enough to handle them. For me now, like I think a lot about Gary Vee talks about being on social media, right? Here I am making YouTube videos. I'll put them on TikTok and like do whatever, but it's like I don't go on there to just consume depressing content. Like as Gary Vee would say, the algorithm learns you. And so if you're looking up bullshit on depressing stuff that's horrible, people fighting in the street, whatever, the algorithm's going to serve you more of what you are interested in looking at, where you spend your time clicking on those videos, where you spend your time watching them. And so it knows you better than you know you. So if you're spending your time like I do, or like Gary Vee does, looking at other people helping people helping homeless people on the streets, people, stuff on Bible or scripture, or like understanding religion and like why and its impact and why, and then like looking at the Bible more as like a guidebook than like some guy on an anthill with a magnifying glass on us all the time. Like I spend my time there, and that for me has positive effect, but I probably wouldn't have been able to do that before I was able to shift some of my perspective and some of my mind shift. I probably would have gotten sucked into, people, fighting in the streets or baking pies or whatever, stupid stuff. So, just understand like where you put your focus is what you get. And I love Tony Robbins does this exercise of like, when I say where you put your focus is what you get, I mean the quality of your life is determined by your emotions. Your emotions are determined by where you're focusing. And an interesting exercise that Tony does is like, close your eyes in the room that you're in, like think of the color green. Like what are all the things, before you close your eyes, like absorb everything in the room that you're in the color green, right? So you look around, everything in color green, you close your eyes, and he said, well, okay, what'd you notice that was red? Not much, because you were focusing on green. And so just by being aware, there's so many people in my own life that just aren't aware of their own emotions. I can see with their body language and their breathing and that they're not in a good state. And you want to help people. But it's like, you have to become aware of when you're starting to go into a state and you're in you're feeling depressed or whatever. Be aware of that. And where is that coming from? You need to have, being able to have mental stamina in the mental game of Olympics, right? Is like, you need to be understanding like where you're at. And this is important for becoming a leader, because if you don't know where you're at, which many people don't, they're walking around zombies, depressed, they don't even know why, not fulfilling a purpose, not feeling fulfilled because they're not living in the purpose that they were created for. How are you going to help your team? How are you going to hire employees? How are you going to figure out when they have health issues and whatever, how to help them work through things? Like, if you can't figure out where you're at, you're not going to be able to serve other people, like your clients, and you're not going to be able to serve your team. So you need to become a psychologist, and that goes into health. Like, I don't like going to the gym, but I go to the gym because the consistency of showing up to something that I don't like to show up for reminds me that I can do that in other areas of my life. I can figure out how to sell a physical product that I've never done before. I can figure out how to run a food truck. Whatever it is that I want to do, I know that I can do it because, as Alex Ramosi would say, I have evidence in the past of breaking through other barriers in my life, consistently doing things I thought I couldn't do, getting into shape and lowering my body fat to a certain percentage that I thought was not possible for me at whatever my age is, right? In my 30s. Like that's really important to do. It's really important to have these things in your life, routines in your life that help you keep pushing. I'm always like doing new audiobooks and whatever to keep learning. And I'm going to touch on that in a second, but the health game is really important because what you're eating, what's going in your gut has a huge effect on your emotional state, on your sleep quality, on how you show up for yourself, which then impacts how you show up for other people. So again, remember, the vagus nerve runs from the brain all the way through the gut, and there's like more neurons in the vagus nerve than there is in like I forget what the particular area is of the brain, but it has a serious amount of neurons in just in the gut. So you have to be conscious and think about what you're eating. If you're eating garbage food and fried food all the time, it's like it's going to impact your emotional state. And so you need to be aware of that. The next one is persistence. I think anyone can make just about anyone can make just about any business successful with enough persistence. I think if you wanted to make Beanie Babies a comeback thing and you were going to spend 50 years doing that, you probably could. Like, I think if you're persistent enough with anything, if someone's persistent enough, I look at my software startup in 2016 and our failure, and I think a lot of the failure, I think for all of us, when I talked to the team that we had at the time, a lot of the failure was just not staying in the game. I think we would have definitely made it and definitely had way more success had we kept in it. So persistence, obviously that's a financial situation, and so there's those, but there's also mental persistence of like, I don't want to do this, I'm going to do it anyway. And then I had another video on frameworks for that, where it's like, I just focus on the first 5, right? I don't focus on the rep of 50 sit-ups or 100 sit-ups. I just say, okay, I'm going to do the first 5. Then I'm going to see how do the next 5. I just break it into smaller chunks so that I can focus. But persistence is key, and obviously you hear that everywhere. But it's mental, it's physical, it's financial, it's emotional, it's persistence in all areas. Understanding that it's not going to be fair. Like, life is not going to be fair, and in fact, number one, don't expect it to be. Like, there's some other person that's way ahead of you, and they had all these things, and you whatever. Like, the more that you learn about your competitors, or the more that you learn about other successful people in their life, the more you find out that they had pretty messed up situations coming into things, that they had, rough situations with their parents. If you've ever heard Tony Robbins' story, it's pretty rough. If you ever heard Tom Bilyeu's story, it's pretty rough. Like, if you've ever listened to these people and you hear about their stories, their origin stories, and how they got to where they are, like, it's not rainbows and butterflies. Like, it never is. And even for people that, maybe they had a wealthy upbringing and whatever, it's like people have their own demons. And I think there's this, even in my own family, I hear people say things like, well, it's just easier for that person because they always had money or this or that. My belief and my experience, with my eyes wide open, like feeling my feels and like looking at what's going on around me and seeing what other people are experiencing, we all have the same we all have the same ability to achieve a high quality of life or a low quality of life. It's just dependent on how we filter and process what we're experiencing. So understanding that it's not going to be fair. And in fact, your flaws, and Milet talks about this a lot, your flaws are what make you uniquely qualified, right? So what the heck does that mean? That means Tom Bilyeu starting a $200 million, protein bar company. It came from his flaws of being overweight and lazy and coming from a family that was unhealthy and whatever. It's like those things that he was embarrassed of or whatever, they were what uniquely made him qualified. For me, like I certainly haven't made it. There is no destination number one, but I haven't gotten to the first plateau or whatever of success that I've wanted to get to. I haven't gotten to the first milestone or checkpoint, if you will. But for me, I mean, certainly being told that I couldn't go to college, just like Gary Vee. I'm pretty sure that same as Gary Vee, I think we had the same guidance counselor. And it's like being told that I wasn't intelligent enough to go to college. Then, getting out of college and being told like, oh, I couldn't work at these companies. I couldn't be in New York. Like, there was people more qualified than me. My college was like too scandalous to like be considered. They really wanted people from Columbia and Yale and whatever. It's like, I love how Gary Vee says like, I didn't have a choice but to start my own company. Because I just understand that so clearly. I feel like I have fought so long to get a W-2 job and do this whole thing and play the game, and it didn't feel good to me. Like, it just wasn't fulfilling. But, you need a paycheck. You have to live. It's like air. You can't not have money. Every day that your refrigerator is plugged in or whatever, you're paying money to keep it on, to survive. And so I played that game and played that game and played that game for a decade, and I'm just like, this isn't working. And so I'm just trying to reiterate that the things that you look at yourself and you think that you're too angry, you're too ugly, you're too old, you're too whatever it is, your flaws, your unique set of flaws, and also your gifts are what make you uniquely qualified to help the people that you're passionate about helping. And so don't look at I'm not saying embrace your flaws. If you're lazy, I'm not saying go be a slob and eat a bag of potato chips on the couch. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying your speech impediment, your baldness, your gray hair, like whatever your thing is, that's not disqualifying you. And so back to the emotional game, understand that like you need to be aware of your thoughts and what they're doing and why you have these limiting beliefs. But those limiting beliefs are the things that you think about yourself that are flaws. They might be the things that are qualifying you to serve the people that are just like you. So the next is having a value ladder. I really like this. Russell Brunson talks about this in his book, .com Secrets. Having a value ladder is really important. Having a singular product is really not owning a business. And so for him, it's like he has the book. That's like the cheapest thing. And then he has ClickFunnels, which is this software that's thousands of dollars. So that's pretty expensive. And then he has like these coaching programs, which are like, up to, I think, $250,000 for like his inner circle program. And so he has this value ladder of things that he takes people through. And it starts with having a dream customer. He talks in his book about, and I talked about this in a previous video, but like he got to the point where he started a company, started to get some money, and he just was so unhappy because he was serving this customer who didn't align with what he really wanted. They weren't fulfilling to work with. He didn't want to work on helping you get your website set up. He wanted to work on helping your business take off. And he had to deal with all this crud in the beginning of that life cycle for those early stage customers when he really wanted to be dealing with later stage customers, people that had money, people that already understood the value of what he had to offer. He didn't want to have to convince people. And so you want to be aware of your dream customer, number one. Like, what do they look like? What do they sound like? What kind of money do they make? Where do they live? Where do they live on the internet? How are you going to find them? And then what's the entry level value that you can offer them? And then what's the highest tier value that you can ascend them to? I'm not saying you need to have that figured out day one. I think it will probably be wise, whether it's coaching, whether it's a book, whether it's, or something small starting out. Like it could be a really small thing starting out. Figure out, you get that lead in from Facebook or whatever, and now they're in, they buy your cheap thing. What are you going to ascend them to? How can you provide them a ton of value with your gifts, your unique set of experiences? How can you add more value to them in your value ladder? So thinking beyond just one product. The next piece is an obsessive love for the journey. I think for me personally, I always assume like when you get to a certain amount of money or this or that, or you read a certain amount of books, it's a destination. And I think we're programmed that way because of higher education. It's like, you go to 4 years of school and then you get this thing. It's like, then a lot of people get your BS or your BA or whatever, and you go off and you get a job that's this amount of money. And if you stay in and you get your MBA, then you go off and you become a consulting person. And if you get a PhD or if you do whatever, then it's like, you get this. And it's like, there's this mindset that it's like, I'll just, even in the trades, right? Like automotive or electrical, it's like, I'll re-up my cert. You have to re-up your certifications on certain things every so many years. But it's like, education is set up to feel like a destination sometimes. But the reality is you have to become obsessed with figuring out and understanding that you know that you don't know. Like there's so many things when I learn them, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I feel even dumber now, like having learned about this certain health stuff or whatever, because there's so much I don't know, but especially about funnels, right? Like I've been in software for nearly 15 years and it's like, I read Russell Brunson's book and whatever, and it's like, I've been literally working on funnels within companies or whatever, and Russell has such a different take on it that it's like, every time I read the book, I feel like there's so much that I never knew about that I'm like, all of a sudden there's this new universe and there's this new galaxy that I see of things I didn't know. And so it's a humbling experience, but it's becoming obsessed with that journey and realizing that there's no destination is really critical. Because there's no destination and becoming obsessed with this whole process of self-improvement and this journey that you're on, you're either growing or you're decaying. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. Like it's black or white. And so if you're not reading, if you're not listening to audiobooks, for me, I don't love to read, I fall asleep. Audiobooks and all these other things, I can implement them into my life. I can listen to the same book 4 or 5 times and get more out of it each time much quicker than I would in some other way. And so there's always a way for you to start absorbing information, but either you're learning and growing or you're not. And for me right now, I would say it's a challenge. I want to acknowledge like I'm making videos for people that are getting started too, and I'm in that place. And it can be hard to start storing up this information and these experiences and not implementing. So I know that I need to start applying the stuff that I'm learning to my business or start another business, even if I'm not obsessed with that particular idea, because I need to start practicing these things that I'm learning in order to understand them, in order to get that muscle memory from doing them. And so there's a balance of that as well. And And so the last piece that I want to leave you guys with is a challenge. There's 3 pieces to this, and I've done these myself. I've recommended them to other people, and I think they've helped a lot. And so the 3 things I want to recommend, and again, like this whole video is on helping you have more of a leader mindset, but this could be for someone as well that's just trying to live a more fulfilling and positive life. But the challenges I want to leave you with is, number 1, you need to become more aware of your emotions. You need to become more aware of your self-talk. So those could be two separate things, or they could be tied together, right? Your self-talk could create a depressing state, right? If you hear a lot of people say, I'm too old, or sometimes I do these videos and I didn't feel like doing this video today. Like, I just don't feel like it. I don't feel like it. I talk weird. I got this haircut this week and I really didn't like the way it looked. All these little things like go in your head, and you have the self-talk, and that kind of, if I didn't do this, I would be in a depressed state. So I'm like, I need to go do that and whatever. But also becoming aware of your emotions. There's sometimes I've realized I'll listen to music that I used to like in high school or whatever, and they're like punk songs, or they kind of have negative lyrics, and I'm like, I'll be in a weird way after listening to that stuff for 30 minutes or an hour, and I'm like, there's a lot of cursing and whatever, and I'm just like, this is having an effect on me. Watching the news has an effect on people. Endlessly scrolling TikTok and whatever, if you're one of those people that has an algorithm that's trained on negativity, you need to become aware of that, because you're literally poisoning yourself. So taking account, taking income, taking an inventory of your emotions is critical. If you can't do that for yourself, there's no way in heck you're going to be able to do that for other people, whether they're your customers or whether they're your employees. Number 2, these are more tactical. At bedtime, when you're starting to go to sleep, think about what you learned that day. What did I learn today? What's something that I learned today? And try not to make it BS stuff. Try to make it something that aligns with what you're working on, aligns with the version 2.0 of yourself that you're working on. What's something that you learned that day? And then when you wake up, I know these are really tacky, but a lot of times I'll write what I'm grateful for. I'll do a thing of gratitudes, and when I do that and I start my day that way, I'm 10x happier. I know that Alex Hormozy talks about gratitudes being hard for him. I really don't understand that. Like, if you walk down the stairs to your kitchen, or if you walked from your bedroom to your kitchen, you know how many freaking gifts that you have to be grateful for, that you have legs, that you have eyes to see, that you woke up when hundreds of thousands of people each day don't, that you have food in your fridge, that your electricity is probably on. So if you can't come up with things that you're grateful for, you probably need to reality check yourself. So those are the 3 things that I would recommend: is becoming aware of those emotions and self-talk. What did you learn when you're going to bed? Try to recall something you learned that day, and try to also be aware of that during the day, so you get yourself to learn new things. And then when you wake up, what are 4 or so things that you're grateful for that day? I hope these help you, and I hope these serve you. Have a great week, guys.